For almost all of human history, life was pretty rough. A famous philosopher once called it nassy, brutish, and short. But then, just a few hundred years ago, something amazing happened. Economic growth. It's this incredible force that's lifted billions of people out of poverty and completely reshaped our world. But here's the thing. This engine of prosperity, it doesn't run at the same speed everywhere. And that brings us to the massive puzzle we're tackling in this explainer. Why are some countries rich while others stay poor? To really get our heads around this, let's start with a real-world economic mystery. We're going to look at the story of a few countries whose futures went in such wildly different directions, it's almost hard to believe. Just look at these numbers from back in 1950. Argentina was doing pretty well for itself. Its per capita GDP, which is basically a measure of the average income per person, was almost double that of a war-torn Japan and a whopping 7 times that of South Korea. I mean, if you were a betting person back then, Argentina was the horse to back. But let's fast forward to 2018, the story has completely flipped on its head. Japan and South Korea are now economic giants, while Argentina, well, its growth kind of hit a wall. And this all happened within a single lifetime. So this is the central question, isn't it? How on earth did their paths split so drastically? What happened? To get to the bottom of this, we've got to pop the hood on the economic engine itself. Okay, so to figure out why some economies just take off and others sputter out, we need to start with the absolute basics. What are the fundamental ingredients that actually make an economy grow in the first place? Well, economists usually break it down into 3 main parts. First up, you've got labor. That's us, the people actually doing the work. Second, there's capital. Think of this as all the tools and infrastructure we use, from a simple wrench to a massive factory or a highway system. But the third ingredient, that's the most mysterious one, and honestly, it might be the most important. It's technology and ideas. Let's just call it the secret sauce. So how in the world do economists measure this so-called secret sauce? They use a concept called total factor productivity, or TFP for short. The best way to think about it is as a measure of pure efficiency. So imagine you count all the growth that comes from adding more people or more machines. TFP is all the growth that's left over. It's about working smarter, not just harder. It's the new ideas, the better ways of organizing things, the innovations that let you get way more output from the exact same inputs. Think about the invention of the assembly line. That wasn't about adding more workers. It was about rearranging them in a genius way to build cars way, way faster. That right there is a massive leap in TFP. This graph here, it shows you perfectly why TFP is such a big deal. Look at that bottom curve. If all you do is add more capital, more tools, more machines, you move along that curve from point A to point B. Yeah, you get more stuff, which is good, but you start hitting what's called diminishing returns. Each new machine adds a little less value than the one before it. Now, to get that real, lasting growth, you have to innovate. That's TFP. It doesn't just move you along the curve, it shifts the entire curve up, taking you from point B to point C. Suddenly, you're producing way more with the exact same amount of capital. It's a total game changer. So if labor, capital, and TFP are the ingredients, what are we missing? Well, every good cook knows you need a recipe. See, it turns out it's not just about what resources you have. It's all about the environment you're in and the rules everyone's playing by. And this right here is basically the recipe for prosperity that decades of economic research have pointed to. You need a stable government and the rule of law so people feel safe and contracts are enforced. You absolutely need to protect property rights so innovators know they can actually profit from their cool new ideas. You need good financial markets to get money from savers to people with big projects. And of course, you've got to invest in your people. Education and health are key. Be open to trade with the rest of the world and have a tax and regulatory system that encourages people to start businesses, not punish them for it. Without this recipe, you can have the best ingredients on the planet and they'll just go to waste. All right, so we have our ingredients, labor, capital, and ideas, and we have our recipe, the institutions and rules that make everything work. Now we can finally go back to our big puzzle and ask another huge question. Can poor countries ever actually catch up to the rich ones? The theory that says yes, they can, is called economic convergence. The basic idea is actually pretty simple. It should be easier for a poor country to grow. They don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? They can just copy and adapt the technologies, the business practices, and the ideas that have already been proven to work in wealthier countries. So, in theory, this should let them grow much, much faster and eventually close that income gap. But here's the thing. When we look at the real world, the theory doesn't always pan out. As you can see from this chart, the evidence is, well, it's messy.
On one hand, you have these incredible success stories like South Korea and China. They clearly got the recipe right and saw absolutely explosive growth. But on the other hand, you have lots of countries, especially in Latin America and Africa, that have actually fallen even farther behind since 1950. So what gives? And that brings us to maybe the most important takeaway of all. Convergence isn't some automatic law of economics like gravity. It's conditional. It's a choice. Countries that put that recipe in place, the stable institutions, the property rights, the investment in people, they can join what some economists call the convergence club. But the ones that don't, they risk getting stuck and left behind.
Now, I know we've been talking about percentages and GDP, and it can all feel a bit abstract. So let's bring this down to a really human level and see why even just a few percent of economic growth matters so much. It all comes down to a fundamental principle. Over a long period of time, even tiny differences in growth rates have enormous consequences. And it's all because of the incredible power of compounding. This isn't just something for your retirement account. It's one of the most powerful forces shaping the destiny of entire countries. What does that actually look like? Well, take the number on the screen, 24. If a country can manage to grow at an average rate of just 3% a year, its standard of living will completely double in only 24 years. But if it only grows at 1% a year, it takes 72 years to do the same thing. Think about that. That 2% difference is everything. It's the difference between transforming a country in a single generation versus waiting for 3 generations. It is, quite literally, the difference between poverty and prosperity for millions of people. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've seen that growth comes from people, tools, and most importantly, from ideas and efficiency, that TFP. But all of that potential is only unlocked by having the right recipe of institutions and policies. So that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As we look ahead, with all the challenges and opportunities like AI, climate change, and global shifts, what do you think will be the most important ingredient for growth in the next 50 years?